Hello, guys. David Vose here again. Wow, what a beautiful day. And it seems like every day is about the same. About noon, 1, 2 o'clock, depending, usually the last half of the day, it starts to rain, and it rains pretty much off and on, and sometimes all through the night. But by morning, it's all cleared off, and we've got some sunshine for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, and it starts getting cloudy and just enough to keep the sun off and keeps it cool. It's really, really nice. But boy, when it rains, it just rained all night last night, and the roads are all muddy. Well, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. So, been hearing a lot of stuff, and more I'm completely convinced that everything that we hear is control. Everything's controlled. But we've been thinking that there were some things that weren't controlled. Let me give you an example. There's a particular family of individuals in the world that we've not been allowed to speak of for the last 100 years or something. I don't know how long. And it's practically an unwritten rule. They don't need to make a legal decision about it. Like, there isn't a law on the books. Well, actually, there probably is. It's called anti-SEMI, tism. And yeah, you can lose your job. I don't think they can execute you yet, but you can lose your job. You can be ashamed out of your community. Your family will never speak to you again because, of course, if you don't have money and if you don't act normal, why, then you're a recluse. And look, these guys can literally come in and have you put away for insanity. I've known people that they've done that to. I know personally people that I speak to from an insane asylum that from the time they were little, they were put away. They're not crazy. They never were. But once you get under that circumstance, if you don't have family, anyone to fight for you, you get lost in the system and they keep you in there. They make a lot of money off of you. They require this person to take fluoride pills every day. And that destroys their brain. And so the longer they're in the system, they become vegetables. So there are many ways they could do that. There were people in the past that they didn't like. And I don't know, we talked about the Astors. They were the richest. Well, we're not sure, but they were very rich. And they didn't agree with some of the Federal Reserve things like that. But I don't know if that means they were good people. There was a war amongst the mafia and one side won. That's what I think, because this particular guy named Astor also was named Jacob, and Jacob or Benjamin or, like Benjamin Netanyahu, they all have this Jonathan. They use these biblical names. And so I haven't done a specific search on I'm certain that they're all part of the same thing, and they fight amongst themselves at times. But at some point, one of the factions won and got supremacy, and I think they have absolute power now. I saw a little clip just, I guess, yesterday where something was going around where this guy's asking Elon Musk something about, you're the richest man in the world or something. And Elon said, no, I'm not the richest man in the world. And they said, oh, really? Who is? He said, well, Putin's the richest man in the world. Putin's got more money than I do, and he's got a lot more power. He can move armies. Well, he didn't actually mention the fact that Elon is actually fighting a war with Putin, but they're doing it together. That's why, of course, Elon is pretending to be fascinated by the power of Putin, why he's magnificently wealthy, and he's so amazing, and of course he's my enemy, but he's got more power than I do. Well, they're setting up a scenario But if he says that Putin's wealthier than he is, then he probably is. And I had said that before. I also think Trump is a lot wealthier than we know. But I believe that these individuals are doing something, orchestrating something. I've been talking with Joshua, and even though I don't think he understands what the second coming is, seems like a good guy, and he's got a lot of understanding, and he seems to be, he's certainly aware that something's going on right now. I guess he doesn't call it the second coming, which is odd to me, very odd. But aside from that, we both agree that they're about to try to do something. And he's been studying some of these individuals. He's saying that there's this group of Judeans, shall we say, or whatever you want to call them, that are saying at this point that there are two messiahs. One of them's the son of Joseph, one of them's the son of David. And I guess they've been kind of saying this in the Kabbalah and the traditions and so forth, that there are these two messiahs, and one of them's name is Yeshua. So in their mind, some of them have been saying that the first Messiah would be the Antichrist. The second one would be the real Christ, or the real Messiah. So they think, I guess some of them had thought for a long time that, and they also called these individuals the Yahweh and the little Yahweh. And I think they think that Jesus is the little Yahweh, which is completely backwards. But they call him Yeshua, and they know who he was, so they do recognize Jesus, but they think he was the Antichrist. And so they've been gearing up, I believe, all the way since William Miller. Now, granted, William Miller and the Advent movement, which Jehovah's Witnesses came out of, because I was raised Jehovah's Witness and thrown out when I was 18. And, of course, my whole family's, destroyed our whole family. I don't even have any contact with my family anymore. I was shunned, and they're a terrible organization on the outside. But a lot of times you look at these groups and you see all this information. You're like, wow, well, they got all this information. Like, where'd they get all this? Maybe they're kind of true, right? Well, this is what people are doing across the board. Same with Adventists. They're like, well, Armstrong was so smart, but he thought we should keep the holy days, and it's so wonderful the things he wrote about, and the British Israelism and all. But okay, it's all got lots of truth intermingled with it. Where did they get it? They studied it and got it from the occult. Yeah, it was Jehovah's Witnesses that believed that the deity dwelt on Alcyon, which is in the Pleiades, and many of the occult believe that. Now, they also hold Aldebaran is very important, which is the eye of Taurus. There's a star called Aldebaran, and they believe that that's where they got the information for the UFOs. This is what they claim back in the days of World War II in Nazi Germany. And they had this little group of women that they secluded away and gave them comforts and kept them away from the worldliness, and had them have a certain diet. It was almost like the little Vestal virgins of the ancient times. And they encouraged them to be psychic, gave them books, and developed that into them. And they would have these dreams, and these girls began to make contact. I mean, they were basically prepping them to be seance. They didn't believe in the Lord, or didn't have any worries about spirits or testing the spirits. This is the same thing was going on with John D. Edward Kelly, or, any of these other groups that brought the devil up out of the pit. And they said, hey, who are you? And, I'm the Lord. Oh, well, they didn't ask which Lord, right? And they're like, well, can you give us power? We'll give you great power, but you must worship us, and you must swap wives and be pedophiles and sacrifice your babies. And they're like, oh, well, that's a lot to ask. Well, if you want to know the truth, you're going to have to understand that we're aliens in an interdimensional realm, and Jesus isn't real. And come on, we'll do a miracle and we'll prove it. So they do a miracle, and like, oh, okay, I guess you're real, So these people didn't follow integrity. They didn't use their mind. They weren't prepared. They had no oil in their lamps. And they said, where is the promised presence of the Lord? Why, Since our forefathers fell asleep in death, all things continue as they've been. And they began to go out and eat and drink with the confirmed drunkards. In other words, they went back to the old covenant of Yahweh, which is the beating of your fellow servants, right? Of course, Jesus told us to love one another. So they became gluttons again in that religion of vengeance. Well, so they believed in these things. And so you see this in all of these groups. Seventh-day Adventists also believed that Jesus was Michael the Archangel. Now, I'm not even saying that's necessarily wrong. We know that the book of the Apostle Paul talks about Jesus coming with the voice of the archangel. All right, is that proof that Jesus is the archangel? I don't think so. Jesus speaks through his angels, but so that's not proof. But then you go to the verse that says Michael and his angels battled with the devil and his angels. So whoever this Michael is, he's the leader, the archangel. He's the chief of all the angels. Now, we know that the angels, as we have said, are the exalted men who lived before the flood. That was the heavens and the earth that then was. So you see, they're heavenly beings, but there were earthly beings as well in those days, just as there will be in the millennium. So the heavenly beings were called the deities. In our Bible, they're called patriarchs. There were the first 9 down, actually with Adam, there's 10, down to Noah. But then there are down to, I believe it's down to Jacob, you have the 24. And these are the patriarchs. So the 24 elders are the original patriarchs. Now, in Judaism, in the book, because the Judeans were the oracle bearers. And so that is the correct book. It's come down to us. It's an oracle. Now, what is an oracle? Well, an oracle is a message from the divine being. And it's written usually in some sort of crypt or symbols. But everything is based on these symbols in the Bhagavad Gita and the holy writings or the hieroglyphs of Sumerians and the cuneiforms and all this other stuff. They all talk about, and what does it stem from? All this knowledge stems from astrology. And here's what is going to blow your mind. Astrology is a word we use today a lot because it has the word star, Aster. That guy we were talking about, Aster, that they killed because they had a big war. Well, okay, his name is Esther, the male version of Esther or the stars. Zoroaster. And Zora was the line of Judah. So that's what those words are. And that priesthood up there in Persia was a true lineage. There was one in Troy and Rome, and the Vestal Virgins and the Pontifex Maximus and the Rex Sacrorum, and all of these other things come from it. The Druids and all the worlds. And the up in Japan, the Shinto is also a remnant of the tribe of Israel. And they have also the Ark of the Covenant on 2 poles that they wear white robes and pull this thing through the triumphal procession. And they got the priests and they have the samurai or the Sumerian priests from Bethel, the northern tribes of Israel, Samaria. And they became the Samurai priests. And so it's all the same religion. They believe in the same deities. In fact, many of the Oriental Japanese language is, if you look at them, they're just some of the Hebrew letters backwards. Look at Hebrew, and it's very close. So it's another branch of all of this language that was dispersed at the Tower of Babel. It all goes back to Noah. Everybody comes from Noah. So astrology is a word that we understand as a circle, and around the circle are the constellations, and they're going around and around. The sun and the moon is up there. It's everything in the sky, the stars, the sun, and the moon, and it's all going around the earth. Okay, so in that blueprint, the earth is stationary. It's in the center. It's a geocentric, not a heliocentric. And that's the way the Bible is written, a geocentric pattern. Now, we're not talking about flat earth, okay? There's nothing to do with the flat earth. But it was, for all practical purposes, since the universe doesn't move, and the universe is everywhere, so it doesn't move. But things rotate and things fly around, and there's lots of things going around out there. But all those things are going around us. We're the center. And so, in reality then, you could make anywhere in the universe the center. The sun could be the center, or another sun, or another galaxy, or the center of the galaxy, or the center of the universe, or the center of the mega universe, or whatever. But the Bible's not trying to talk about some kind of reality that we couldn't comprehend. This is written for us. We're in the center. We're on the stationary earth. And so, this whole thing then was also called the cosmos. So, today, since we've got cosmonauts and we think of the cosmos as the universe with a bunch of stars and stuff, we assume that the cosmos, or the end of the cosmos that the Bible's always talking about, the end of the world, is somehow the end of the material world, the cosmos. But that word, the cosmos that we have today, is named the cosmos. It's not a name for the universe. It's a description for the universe. That's why we call it the cosmos. And so what is this description of the universe? The order of things, the system of things, the arrangement. So therefore, it's also come down to us as cosmetics, because a woman goes and arranges her hair, or braids her hair, or puts ornaments around her body, and this is her arrangement or her cosmetics. I think today we get confused. We think of cosmetics as makeup. It's not just the makeup. It's the braiding of the hair or the outfit. It's the arranged attire. So we don't say that cosmetics means the person, the whole person. It's not either the spirit or the soul or the body. It's the outer arrangement. You're a person even if you're naked. Okay, you're there even if you're naked. It's not the universe. It's not the body. It's how you arrange the body. It's not the universe. It's the order or the laws and things that are in place that govern and the arrangement of that particular person. We're the person. The cosmetics is just how we arrange the person. So the universe exists. It's not a cosmos, but it's called the arrangement of things. It's the, well, we'll find out. And I don't even know if we'll have enough time in this video to explain that this word cosmos had in it the entire order from the principalities, powers, dominions, thrones, and dominions. And that's the cosmos that Jesus came to destroy. When he went down into hell, the lower regions, where there was this lower ego reigning over the center or the land. Okay, so the sun would come up and reign, and then the moon would come up and the stars would reign at night. The lesser light, the lesser Yahweh, or the I am vengeance, the I am jealous. And that was the kingdom of darkness. We never went anywhere, but the deities come around and go in their order. And this is the order of things, and it's astrology. We'll get more into that here in a minute. The word cosmos simply means the order or system of things, and it consists of principalities, powers, dominions, and thrones. And that's all going to be replaced, the entire cosmos, but not the physical world, not the land. So they rule in stages. Each house is ruled over by a deity, and they rule, and there's a gradual ascendancy. We're ascending unto heaven, but hell is in the past. So when any individual goes to hell, they're descending, just as Jesus went to hell and overcome the whole thing. And his body will overcome the whole thing with him. He'll lead them out like a procession, and the angels and the stars in their own order. But when you're going down, you're literally going through these different deities, and they rule over us. And we're stationary. They're just going by. So Cain went to the land of Nod, the fugitives. That's going down into the carnal earth. And he's the one then that reigns over this world, ruled over by the lower ego in his age. And during those ages at the bottom of the wheel, they reigned. And they reign first, darkness, an evening, and then a morning, see? And so the devil will reign first. Cain usurped the authority, and that's why we got under his control. And he then ruled over the governments that were like bestial. His nature, the lower ego, had reign over all these houses, and these animals represented these particular natures and these deities, the order of things. But when you go down, you also got to go back up. What is it that Jesus ascended, but that he first descended in the lower regions of the earth? He was condemned by that lower ego, as all of us, because he was the firstborn among many brethren. So you see, Cain was only punished for his sin by the wrath of Yahweh. He was punished 7 times, but his 7 times ended. It's over. And then he had this child, I think 7 generations later, and that person, Lamech, had Naamah. Now, she was free, and Noah was able to take her as a wife because it wasn't forbidden, because that 7 times is over. But Lamech had a daughter, and Lamech, before he has this daughter, Naamah, he kills somebody, just like Cain. And he says, well, if Cain's going to be avenged 7 times, then Lamech 70 times 7. Now, that is, as you know in the Bible, something that will eventually end, because every week ends with the Sabbath and you rest. And every Jubilee in the 50th year, you have rest. And everybody, their debts are paid off, and it's the release. Well, even Lamech's sin will eventually end, and he'll come, and that represents man going through the dark night. So Noah then is in the world that is now, and he marries this woman who is under the curse, because it's his concubine, because his wife dies, and the rabbis talk about this. Well, he marries this person, and there is no children by her, except that Ham goes and has relations with her, and this usurps the authority of Shem, Noah's firstborn son, because now it's going back to the line of Cain, and it perpetuates this sin. And now it's really trying to tell you that we're about to go through a long period to go through these 7 times of this great tribulation, which is the greatest of all the tribulations, the time that we're in this mortality. And through those 7 times, or 70 times 7, till we're completely purged. And then Naamah is redeemed by the Lord Jesus, or Mary Magdalene. She is the great queen who initiated all of us, even Eve, down into the world of good and evil, that we might learn the difference between right or wrong. Babes, not yet heirs, but the whole creation groaneth in travail until now, waiting for the revealing of the sons of the Divine One. We're going to come out on the horizon with Jesus, like Orion or Osiris in the ancient Egyptian, comes out, and he's that constellation Aries or Osiris, same word, and he comes up over the Duat or the horizon from Hades, and it's the resurrection. So now keep all of that in mind. This is going to help us to understand what direction is, east, west, north, and south, and where the kingdom of the Lord might be, and what all this has to do with the kingdom of heaven, and whether there is a kingdom in the sky or what we're talking about here. If you notice, the Bible says many times certain things like, the earth shall abide forever, shall not be made to totter. It is established, created to be inhabited. The Lord made the earth, it says it is good, and he finished it. That's our home. So it is not the earth that will be destroyed, but it is the cosmos, the order of things that will be destroyed. And it is the age that will come to an end and will create and go into another age or a new age. So what I'm getting at here is that you'll find a lot of truth in organizations like Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. But the gist of what they teach is they deny the Lord Jesus Christ and his divine. Well, you say, well, they believe he's divine, David, just not the Father. He's lesser. Well, it's more than that. They believe that only Jehovah's Witnesses, Adventists, same thing. Most modern Mormons, same thing. Not the original, not Joseph Smith. No, he had the truth. Even Russell had a better, accurate understanding. I mean, the Masons, a couple of hundred years ago, had all of this truth. It was taken over and infiltrated. But there was this bad group of individuals in Bavaria. They started the Bavarian Illuminati, and they brought up Satan, and he infiltrated them and gave them plans to make these UFOs. He gave them plans. There's going to be a war in heaven, guys. They're preparing for it. I've seen it in vision. There will be these UFOs that we're talking about. Why do you think they're having disclosure now? Because when Jesus comes, he's going to throw them down to the earth. Right now, they're flying around up to the moon. They got a space station as big as the moon out there that we don't even know about. They go to Mars. They're flying around up there. I don't know. They got stations on the moon, the backside. Russia's doing it. China's doing it. They're all run by the same corporate entity. And they built these not just so they could see how fast they could go, or, I mean, come on. In a generation, they come up with all this. How could they know any of this or come up with this? Well, because they had their little seances and they contacted Satan. And Satan, I think Satan drew them and contacted them, or vice versa. But it was Satan's plan. And of course, Satan is the adversary, and that's the prosecuting attorney, and he's against us. Now, he's not a bad person, he's a just man, but his job is to reign over the carnal world, a bunch of animalistic beings that, are like little, brute beasts, dog eat dog, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And he's coming in his vengeance and his wrath. And so, when you look at these organizations, they were almost all of these. Like I said, Ellen White was buried under an obelisk. Charles Taze Russell was buried under a great big pyramid in the center of the Masonic graveyard, cemetery in Philadelphia, which is the city that was originally slated to be the capital. And this is where all these Masonic individuals came over from Europe. And they created the York Rite, which is the infiltration of the Scottish Rite. And through the York Rite, they took out the Scottish Rite, which was George Washington, Joseph Smith. They murdered him. And they infiltrated. But what they did with this Bavarian Illuminati, came in, infiltrated, changed the teachings. And they flipped the deity. They obscured the truth about Jesus. They knew they couldn't just say, oh, Jesus isn't real. You just got to get down and worship the devil. They couldn't do that. People wouldn't believe them. So it's been a steady effort. Slowly, they had to infiltrate. They first infiltrated and murdered many of the original knowers. They got rid of the Druids, when they first went up into, Britain and took over that area and called it Lundan, because it came from Dan's Mark and Sweden, and they murdered a lot of these individuals. That's where we get the word slave, the Slavs. They made them slaves, where they were the original peoples. The Druids were the seers, the knowers, and they believed in Jesus. All around the world, all the religions. But these Goths and the Vandals and the barbarians that are following the law of Moses, the apostasy, they took over the church, put the mitre of Dagon on him. Now, they never really destroyed the church. I mean, the original rites, Mother Mary and all that stuff, a lot of it's still there. What they did was they got them more idolatry-minded. They obscured the teachings and they hid them so that we don't understand them. It's not wrong, the Trinity, but it's shadowed by some kind of symbolisms. They've taken out the Divine Mother and they've instead put the symbol of this dove. Well, those who know understand that this Isis, this great bird with the great plumage, is our mother. And she was brooding over creation in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. But they've done a lot. They changed the name of our divine being from the Greek version of it, which is Zeus or Theos, the Attic Athenian spelling of Zeus, and the Uranos, the father of the deities, in the Greek language. They changed that then into the Germanic deity of Odin. Now, some of the Germanic tribes used Woden. Some of them, they didn't all live in the same exact area. We're hundreds of miles apart and they had different dialects. And so, some of them would pronounce it Godin, some of them Woden, some of them Odin. The Lombards used the dialect of Godin. And so, the Lombards are the ones that took Italy. They were one of the 10 Germanic tribes. And these do go back to the nation of Israel. So, we've got these 72 angels, 72 deities. They reign. They're covered in the book of Revelation. There's one that looks like a rainbow. And I'm sure he's a very powerful angel in charge of beauty and melody. He may be Raphael because they've said that about him. But these individuals got their white robes, the glowing white robes, because they had been humans as all of us. Just like we're going to get white robes. That's our immortality. But if they have been exalted, that word exalted is used for Jesus in the New Testament. It says he was exalted far above his brethren and above the angels, and all the angels of the divine one shall worship him. So he did and does have worship. So he's above them. Now, Paul says we shall judge the angels. The angels are exalted beings. Why is it we will judge them? If they've already attained and gone through a judgment and gotten their white robes, first of all, when did they do this? Well, as we said, there was a world that then was. And in that world, it was a heavens and an earth. But you see, heaven's not what people think it is. It isn't a place where people live. All the angels and the Lord live in heaven, right? And all the humans, little mortals, live on earth. It's kind of like that, except that the whole place is here on earth. We see in the Greek mythology, the deities would look down, whatever that means, we'll see here in a minute. They would look down from heaven, and they would see mortal men, and they would lust after them. Oh, so these beings could desire, they were humans. They could have relations with the mortals. So what is the difference really between an immortal and mortal? It's not what you think, friends. There really isn't any different other than the vibration that your body is going through. And that vibration is from the source, which is your mind. You change your mind and your body's changed in an instant. We're changing every moment. As you grow in your mind and in your power of faith, you're changing the quality of your life. You might live longer even by just changing one thing about yourself, like a little bit of self-control and you don't drink so much or smoke so much. If you were to live properly and follow all the laws of this world, not man-made laws, but the natural ones, which we simply don't, get punished by some arbitrary king for breaking these laws. We simply have the karmic debt to pay if we break these natural laws. And so we abuse ourselves and we start to die. So sin causes death. All we got to do is stop sinning and we no longer will die. Now it tells us in the book of Isaiah that in the millennium there will be people who will live 900 years, but some who will die at the age of 100, a mere boy. So if you're 100 years old, that's like a boy. Why? Because now we live 100, and if you're 1/10 of that, you're only 10 years old. That's a little boy. Well, in the millennial reign of Jesus Christ and his anointed, the elect, during that time, even though they will be immortal and have immortal robes, and a great multitude will also have that immortality, yet during the millennial, there will be people who will die at the age of 100. Now, why? Because they weren't valiant in faith. They can coexist. Because we know that when the millennial comes, we'll see him and we will be like him. And he is immortal and dies never again. And neither will we. We'll be immortal. Be as the angels. What are the angels? Immortal, exalted beings. Are they really glowing, bright beings? No, that just represents their righteousness, which they got from trusting and believing through faith. Faith in Jesus. And by rejecting the devil and his ways. So, just as the people before the flood in the days of Atlantis, there were those that were considered deities that lived thousands upon thousands of years. That's what immortality is. We're not sure if you live forever or just thousands of years and then you sort of transport into another body because you have knowledge. You know that you never die. You're aware of that immortality. You know and understand that your mind, you are the creator. By your word, all these things are manifested. Whether or not we just are translated from one world through wormholes and ships and go on to other adventures, or whether after some particular age we go through the process of death and reincarnate, but perhaps since we're immortal, we wake up with the prior knowledge, but we just kind of get born into another world that way. I don't personally believe that we go from one world to another in a tin can with rocket fuel. I believe we go through these little wormholes, and that wormhole is what puts you in your mother's womb. And you're born through the lower portal, the southern portal or negative pole of the woman. And you come through that wormhole and you're born in a beautiful way. It's a natural way, and I believe everything is done in a natural way. If you've ever seen Avatar, they show you a couple little secrets. These occult, they know some of these secrets, even though they are deceived into thinking that the laws of Yahweh are the ones that they would want to follow. Yes, Yahweh says his laws are forever, and he will always be. I mean, even the Bible tells you that hell is forever and ever. But we don't live in hell forever because we graduate. And it says hell was open and we came out to a judgment. And the rest of the dead didn't live until the 1,000 years were over, and they have to go through another judgment. There are various judgments. You are allowed to go through the classrooms until you graduate. So there were these individuals before the flood that had already graduated something and got white robes, and they are the angels. And at that time there was a judgment. How do we know? Because it says that the Titans were thrown into Tartarus. That could not have happened without a judgment. Both the Sumerian tablets, the Egyptian, and our Bible tell you there was a world that then was. And in that world, which is the cosmos, within that world there was a heavens and an earth. There were deities and demi-deities, and then there were mortals, all living in the same world. Well, that means that the deities reigned someplace considered above, because it does appear that they divided the earth between north and south and east and west. North has always been up, and south has always been down. Now, it's interesting because in the north, and it says it's Mount Zion, the city of the grand king. Beautiful for situation. Beautiful for situation. The glory of all the earth. In the north, in the most remote sides of the north. Well, as we have said before in other videos, the fulfillment of that is America, that is in the northern hemisphere. But how is that descriptive of the north? Where is the north on the globe? If you got a globe, there's no north, there's no south, there's no east, there's no west. They're not thinking in terms of a round globe. They're thinking of a stationary landmass, the center where everything else revolves around. And from that stationary place, wherever you are on the earth, north then wasn't a direction that was up. And we'll explain this very carefully here. So that is a prophecy about a future place in the north and in the west, which would be in America. And that will be a fulfillment during the millennial, where the kingdom of the divine Jesus Christ and his anointed will reign from America. Now, the land masses may change, just like Atlantis fell and other continents moved around, but somewhere in the area around the United States will be where Adam dwelt, Adam onde Amen, the place that Adam dwelt. He will, in the last days, be sitting there, and Jesus will return to him with all of his children redeemed. So that's where the kingdom will be set up, and it's called the place or the city of the grand king in the north. There is also another city. Okay, remember we always have these two. We have Seth, and the seventh in line from Adam is Enoch. Well, Cain also had a son. His firstborn son was Enoch. Both of these Enochs built cities. Both of them are mountains. The mountain of the Lord is the summer solstice in the analogy, in the great astrological wisdom that breaks down the universe. It's a beautiful science because everything is related. Numbers, letters, realities, pictures. The language, the original language, is based on visible characters that you image, telepathic language. And so therefore trees, mountains, rivers, and streams, these were the names of the divine beings, or the pleroma. And they make up the universe. And it was this I am, which is breathing in and out. And that was the vowels. The when you pronounce letters like k, l, m, n, those originally were how you would pronounce consonants. And the vowels were like oo, eh, ah, oo, breathing. And so e, ah, oo, that was the vowels. And it is what brings the world into manifestation. So if you have just the consonants, which is what the Bible was written in, then it's a mystery because we don't know what it means. All we have is this consonants, but to bring it into manifestation, to be able to see the picture, we've got to know the vowel. And that means the I am. And so if you want to manifest anything in this world, you must believe that you are and that you have that authority, and through faith exercise that authority. You can exercise that authority in the name of Yahweh, but you can do that two different ways. Yahweh is the I am that I am. That is my name. And it is Iyah, Asher, Iyah. And in the Ten Commandments, it's written at the top of the page, Iyah Anoki, or Inki Iyah. That is the same original being who was Cain. Cain is Ke-an, or An-ki. His son was Enki. And so these are plays on words. It's just like the patriarchs from Seth down to Noah are all certain names that are almost mirrored or sometimes rearranged letters or backwards for Cain. What it means is that there is the two halves, the two lines. There is the physical world and the higher world, the spiritual world. And they are one. And they're always together. It's heaven and earth. So you see, friends, heaven doesn't mean up beyond the sky. There's another word for sky. The prince of the power of the air. That's the spirit or the invisible realm. But that's the mind. But there is another place called heaven, which is just means higher. Okay, so there is lower and higher. But lower in juxtaposition to what? Higher compared to what? Well, we're talking about the science, the one science, the cosmology, the cosmos, and its order. And it's ordered in a wheel, the wheel of rebirth. And on the top of the wheel is up, and on the bottom is down. The bottom is winter, the top is summer. So the kingdom of summer is ruled by warmth and beauty and fertility, is Uranus's kingdom, the higher. The lower kingdom is the lower regions, and those are the houses at the bottom of the wheel. It has nothing to do with out into outer space. But there is going to be, just as there was before the flood, there is going to be beings that may have immortality. Certainly after the flood, those beings that went through that judgment gained their white robes. I think they had their white robes and immortality after the flood. And those were individuals like Adam and Seth and certain ones. But after the flood, that was that world, the heavens and the earth that are now, they're both together, is the higher realm of beings that reign over the other beings. But that heaven was usurped. That's why Satan is thrown out of heaven at the beginning of the tribulation. Because right now Satan is in the heavens, ruling over us. But where is he? Up in the sky, somewhere in the middle of the universe? No. How do the demons rule? Where are the demons? Well, remember, we're in the center on the stationary earth. We look up in the sky, and who's ruling over us? If it's the sun, then it's Uranus's kingdom ruling over us in the age of Uranus. But if you look up and you see some particular constellation or star or whatever, that's another house, and they're ruling over you now. They're ruling above you. The kingdom in heaven is ruling over the earth. Okay, and that makes a particular kingdom on earth. If the sun is in the sky, then Jesus is reigning, you see. But if the moon's in the sky, you know it's nighttime. And that's the lesser law, or the adversary that takes you to law. And it's a reflective light. It's not the true light. It's not the one that we're going towards in the kingdom of our Heavenly Father, Uranus. So the fact that we're still in the center stationary world, we didn't go anywhere. We're all still here. But we're going to change depending on who's reigning over us, because they govern us. If the carnal nature or the devil or the deceiver is reigning over us, then we're going to be in a lesser condition. We're going to be in hell. But the demons are reigning over us because we see the stars and not the sun up above. Remember, they were judged in the flood and sent to Tartarus. They could not rule. They couldn't rule heaven, right? Because our Heavenly Father and our Divine Mother and Jesus and all the angels were there. They were exalted. They were given white robes. They ruled over heaven. But why is it that the demons were allowed to go into heaven if they're in hell? Well, remember, in the flood there was a judgment. And Jesus Zeus took the Titans and threw them down to Tartarus. So they were judged. Well, now they're in Tartarus, right? Well, that's where the story of Saturn, who castrated his father, where he somehow did some little tricky-rooney, even though he's not the ruler, he shouldn't be ruling, and it's not his world, but he usurped his father's reign. So Uranus, or Uranus, Noah, was supposed to reign, and all of the children on earth, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were supposed to be subject to him. But his son Ham saw his father's nakedness and slept with Naamah from the line of Cain. And then they became sort of like Esau. They are not the real firstborn. Abel was the real firstborn, but Cain usurped that authority. Shem was the firstborn, but Cham got a line from Naamah going back to Cain. So he then usurped the authority of Shem. And so this is now the situation we're in, this rebellion, where these demonic beings are trying to reign over us. And this is why Jesus, when he comes, at the beginning of the Great Tribulation, there's a war in heaven, and he throws them down to the earth. They were in heaven. How'd they get there? Well, they found ways through ventriloquism or through inhabiting humans and getting them to build some AI or whatever. But the beast is coming out of the bottomless pit and is reigning over us. Okay? And he's using the moon to reign during the night. And the moon is a light, but it's not the true light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. It's not the reality, it's not the kingdom of Uranus on the top of the wheel in the daylight, but it is simply now that the darkness is risen. And here we are in the center of the stationary world, and now we look up and these stars, these wandering stars to whom is reserved the darkness forever and ever, they continue in their rounds, and there will always be these ages that will change from one age to another, but we will advance to another age, and we will become like the angels, become immortal and never die, and his kingdom will have no effect upon us. Well, before the flood, there was heaven and earth, a heavens of old and an earth of old. And now we have the heavens and the earth that are now. What is this heavens and earth then and heavens and earth now? What is it? It's a different planet? Same planet. On that planet, there was what they called the lower. Hell means lower regions. It says, what is it that he ascended? Far above all, but that he descended far below all things. Where'd he go when he descended? To hell. Hell is regions. Tartarus is the lowest pit. The top of the wheel is summertime. The bottom of the wheel is wintertime. That's all it means. And it revolves. Jesus and all of us had to go down through the bottom of the wheel, through the dark winter. And what is it that we descended? But we will also ascend far above all things. Where is this heaven above? It's just on the top of the wheel. It's still on the earth, but now the kingdom of Uranus will reign, and his sun in the sky, the light. So that was in the beginning. And in the days of Atlantis, or before the flood, there was sin, because Cain, he killed his brother. He went to the land of Nod. Where is the land of Nod? Well, the land of Nod may have been a place on earth at one time. They may have built a city, the city of Enoch. But remember, when they all died, Cain was continued to live, so he had children. And there was one heir, was his Naamah, that married Noah, and they got through the flood. But before the flood, there were these descendants of Cain, physical beings on the earth. The Bible's not telling stories. It all starts off literal. But once Cain died, he was not allowed to reincarnate. At least a particular governing body, or the chieftains, this hierarchy, the rulers, from Cain's line that usurped the line of Abel, and they had relations with Seth's line, and it was forbidden for them to do so because they had been told they're going to be fugitives and they had to be punished and segregated off into the land of Nod. But they went ahead and had relations and took wives, all of whom they chose, and this was the Nephilim that fell, and they rebelled, and therefore they were sent to Tartarus. They couldn't incarnate back into the world. They were then wandering spirits, looking for a home. So up until the flood of Noah, they were physical beings. So that's where all the parables that are symbolic or esoteric come from, the roots, the original meanings, the original literal sense. But Noah became the divine being, Uranus, or Anu, or Noah, and he had 3 sons, right? Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus. Well, that is the same as Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they divided up the world. Well, now in our Bible, it says they divided up the earth, certain regions of the earth. Well, in the Greek mythology, it's regions of like heaven and hell and the abyss. See, some of these words that we use today, like the word north, indicated something higher. This is actually one of the biggest revelations that if you don't know this, you can't even understand some of the Bible. It's all confusing. You don't know where heaven is or hell, or what heaven and hell is, or up or down, or because if you're thinking that east is east of the line meridian in Greenwich, and west is the United States and Brazil. They're in the Western Hemisphere. Why? That's arbitrary, you see. Putting an east or a west location on a round globe is impossible, or north or south. So north, south, east, and west had nothing to do with direction on a globe. It had to do with up and down, and what we'll show you here in a moment. All of this was from a comparison of the stationary geocentric Earth. They didn't think about a globe. They thought about up and down, and the up and down was in reference to the motions of the sun, the moon, and the stars. We'll explain. They probably had an area where they lived, and there was, from the very beginning, a place designated Nod. Now, it says in the Bible that Cain went eastward to the land of Nod. So this means that wherever Adam was west. So Adam was in North America, but it's west of where his son Cain went. So his son Cain went eastward. From Eden, he went eastward. So, as we've said, Eden is the word that describes paradise. That was where our Heavenly Father made the world. And it literally means the whole globe, the upper globe. We've said before that all the continents are on one side of the planet. On the back side of the planet is just the abyss. And so it is true, literally, that the abyss is beneath. And on the top of the world is all these continents, the land masses. But anywhere you're at on the land mass, if it's a globe, you're not anywhere east, you're not west, you're not north, you're not south. You're simply in a stationary position on the earth. You're not moving. The stars are moving. The sun is moving. And those are the kingdoms that come across the sky and begin to reign in the various houses. So the kingdom of Zion, there's another way to spell it. It's also written the kingdom of Sion. And that word means north. So in the Hebrew, north originally meant up. It had nothing to do with the direction on a globe. It had to do with up. So we'll see that better here in a moment. But I am looking at the time, and we're at 58 minutes now. And I have got to do another video to get the rest of this in, because if I tried to get this in, this video would be like 2 hours long. I've got too much to tell you, so we're going to have to make a part 2. The reason why you need to listen to part 2, if you watch this entire part, if it wasn't just, captivating enough just on that account that you decide you want to watch again tomorrow, well, there's more reasons why you should listen tomorrow. Because what we're going to show with this line of reasoning, what we're showing is we're going to unveil the entire Bible in a way you've never understood it before, and you're going to see that it's the correct way. You flat earthers, you should watch this. You need to understand what all of this cosmology really means. Why the deception, and who's ruling, and what the kingdom of heaven really is. Heaven is not a place that we're going to go. It's a kingdom that rules over the earth. And it is coming to replace the kingdom that we are in right now, the devil and his demons that are reigning over us. It is going to be so fascinating. It's going to put so much of this together that, some of you said when you finally realized that the Old Testament deity was the devil, it really cleared a lot up for you. And I think there's been a lot of different revelations that have really helped. But this is going to be one of the most important of all of the revelations we've had in order to understand ancient cosmology and heaven. It's important that we understand heaven because we're going to be living in the kingdom of heaven. And Christians today think we're going to go up and be in heaven. We're going to be some ethereal beings or something. And we're not. And we need to know what the millennial is and how immortal beings could live in a world and restore the earth to perfection. And at the same time, there might be other beings that have not yet attained to that. That they didn't come to life until the end of the 1,000 years. How are immortal beings going to live side by side with mortal beings? Well, they did it before the flood, and we're going to do it again. And it's something that continues on for the ages. And it's fascinating what we're going to explain in the second part. So stay tuned. But I'm over an hour now. I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. May the Lord bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.